There's been a changing of the guard in the Mile High City. However, their future Hall of Fame quarterback has decided to come back for at least one more run at capturing a championship ring. So what does the return of Peyton Manning and the hiring of Gary Kubiak mean for the Broncos? The man with all the answers, and joining us this afternoon is James Gomez of 104.3 The Fan in Denver. James, so great to see you, and thanks for joining us this afternoon on the Two Man Advantage podcast.
Thanks for having me on.
So, James, Peyton Manning took a $4 million pay cut in order to give the Broncos more flexibility within their salary cap structure. So I'll begin by asking you, what does the pay cut mean for Manning, and how much do you think he has left in the tank to give to Denver?
I think the pay cut means a lot for Manning. I think you think about Peyton Manning as being one of the best quarterbacks of all time. He's never, ever taken a pay cut at all in his career. He's always been someone that's been looking to get as much money as possible. So it surprised me and a lot of other people who follow the Broncos in the NFL that he did take a pay cut, even though it was small. It's only $4 million. So this wasn't a huge pay cut for Manning. But the Broncos don't have a lot of space to deal with. So with only $4 million, it's not a ton, but it's something. Now, they couldn't keep everybody. Julius Thomas left. He's in Jacksonville. I saw yesterday that Wes Welker was visiting with the Dolphins. So the Broncos are going to have a very different offseason this year than what they had in years past, where they signed a lot of some big-name free agents. Look at the free agents they've signed so far this season. Haven't really been big name, haven't really had those big splashes. So really the Broncos have been losing free agents more than they've been gaining. So it means a lot, I think, for Manning in the sense that he's kind of conceding the fact that he's not the quarterback that he used to be. Maybe he's not worth that $19, $20 million salary that he's been getting. So I think, to me, that's the biggest part of it. But they didn't really have a ton of room to work with anyway. And $4 million helps them out a little bit. They've been able to get a few guys so far in free agency, but at the end of the day, they're not going to be able to do a whole lot with that $4 million.
And in regards to the mutual parting of the ways for the Broncos and former head coach John Fox, how much do you think that was a philosophical change for John Elway, and how much do you think he spearheaded that change so he could be on the same philosophical page as his new head coach and longtime friend, Gary Kubiak?
I think that's exactly what it was. I think that Peyton Manning, John Elway, I think when John Elway made that decision, and it came out as a mutual decision, but I think it was pretty clear that had the Broncos lost to the Colts, there was clearly going to be a change at the head coaching position, and that's something that Coach Fox had leaked to the media beforehand, and it came out before the game against the Colts that if he was fired or if the Broncos had lost the game, he would lose his job, and that's exactly what happened. But the stories that was a mutual parting of ways. But I think you hit the nail on the head. It's a philosophical difference. I think John Elway really wants to have his buddy Gary Kubiak. Keep in mind, his former offensive coordinator when Elway was a quarterback for the Broncos, he knows Kubiak very well, and I think their philosophy, as you put it, their idea of how to build a champion is something that Elway and Kubiak see eye to eye on, and I think that, at the end of the day, was where Fox and Elway parted ways and butted heads, and I think that's why Fox is now in Chicago, and Kubiak is the head coach of the Broncos.
And tell me, in your opinion, what sort of strengths does Gary Kubiak bring to the Broncos, and what sort of direction do you see him bringing the team?
Well, I think one strength right off the bat is that he is the type of coach that believes in the run and has a very clear direction of how he wants to win and how he wants to run his offense, because he's an offensive-minded coach, offensive coordinator for the Ravens just this past season, and I think that's something that the Broncos really needed. That's something that John Elway feels that the Broncos need. keep in mind Peyton Manning is at he's an old age. He's at an old age for a quarterback in the NFL, and Elway really wants to have a solid run game to help Manning out, and that's something that Elway had at the end of Elway's career. And you look at Elway's numbers at the end of his career, especially in that first Super Bowl win. Elway didn't have the best game at all. Didn't even throw for 200 yards. But when you have a running game, when you have an offensive line that can help out your quarterback, that's huge, especially as that quarterback gets old. And I think Elway doesn't believe that Manning can just sit in the shotgun and just throw the ball around. The Broncos could win. I think they saw that, especially against the Seahawks in the Super Bowl, and I think they believe that, especially in the way that they lost to the Colts. So I think there's a new offensive philosophy. It's a run-first philosophy. I think Kubiak is very good with quarterbacks. That's something that Elway knows from firsthand experience, and something that Kubiak has experience with as well in all of his years as a head coach as an offensive coordinator, then recently with Joe Flacco and the Ravens.
And tell me, how much do you think the firing of or mutual parting of the ways of John Fox was a power play on Elway's part? And how much pressure do you think is on Elway to win a championship under Kubiak and his leadership?
I think to go back to your first point, the power play. I think Elway is clearly the guy in charge, and I think we saw that not just with the firing of Fox, but I think it goes back to the first point you made when you started the conversation about the pay cut that Manning took. I think Elway being able to get Manning to take that $4 million pay cut, although it was a small pay cut, it was significant in what it meant, I think, and to get Manning to do that. I think Elway is clearly the dean of Denver. He is clearly the guy in charge of this Broncos organization. There's no way around it. And I think as you look at this Broncos team, you look at what Elway's doing and the pressure that Elway has on himself to win a championship. There's a ton of pressure here in Denver, regardless of who the GM is. There's always the pressure of winning a Super Bowl here. But Elway made that decision. He got rid of Fox. And it's very clear. Elway has said this. This is his own words. We are here to win championships. That's what we're all about. So is there pressure on Elway to deliver a championship as a GM for the Broncos? You bet there is. But it's a pressure that Elway embraces, and it's one that I think that he knows that he's going to have on him every single season. But when you make that decision and you bring in that new head coach, and this is Kubiak, this is Elway's guy, I think there's a lot of pressure on Elway and Kubiak to make this thing work.
And outside of the physical health of both Manning and the hiring of Gary Kubiak, what do you think is the biggest, or what would you classify as some other big-time headlines for the Broncos this offseason?
There haven't really been a ton of big-time headlines for the Broncos this offseason. You look at the offseason acquisitions recently, Gino Gradkowski, and then Antonio Smith on the defensive side of the football. Really nothing big for the Broncos as far as guys they're bringing in. They lost Julius Thomas. He's gone. Raheem Moore, starting safety. He's no longer around. I think the big thing this offseason really was Demaryius Thomas, the guy they're able to retain through the franchise tag, but there could be a little bit of derision there between Thomas now and with the Broncos organization. So we'll see how that relationship moves going forward, as Thomas has said that he's not going to participate in off-season activities, including Manning's recent camp at Duke. So big acquisitions from years past for the Broncos, not really in this offseason. The big news is really the guys that they've lost, and then the one guy that they were able to retain in Demaryius Thomas as a wide receiver, but only retain him as a franchise tag. It's been a very different offseason for the Broncos than what we've seen in the past few years with Elway.
And just switching to the defensive side of the ball for a second, Wade Phillips is the new defensive coordinator there, and he's taking over a defense with a lot of star names, but the Broncos struggled to get a pass rush a year ago. So could you just give me a thumbnail on how you see the defensive outlook for the Broncos, and how important will it be for the Broncos to get a more consistent pass rush from their defensive line and DeMarcus Ware and Von Miller specifically?
Well, I think it's a pretty simple thing that's happening with that defense right now. It's Wade Phillips comes in, he's bringing in a 3-4 defense, and it looks, pretty clear. You're going to have Von Miller on one side of the ball, DeMarcus Ware on the other, and you're going to be your outside pass rushers. This is, of course, something that the Broncos believe and something that they hope will really help gain a better pass rush this season as to what they had in the 4-3 defensive line. So Wade Phillips is known for being a very good defensive coordinator, and this new philosophy, this new 3-4 defense could very well be the catalyst to a better Broncos pass rush this season.
Now, for Peyton Manning, he surpassed Brett Favre last season on October the 20th when he threw his 509th career touchdown pass. He ended the season with 530, and he also has 179 regular season wins, and he's also chasing Favre in that category as well. So how important do you think it is for Manning's legacy to get a second Super Bowl, especially considering he has a under 500 record in the big game?
Gigantic. You can't even put a number on how huge this would be for Manning and his legacy if he was able to get that second Super Bowl ring. Getting that one Super Bowl is nice, but it's just the one. And I know that any quarterback to be a starting quarterback to win a Super Bowl would be a huge accomplishment for anybody. But we're talking about Peyton Manning. We're talking about one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. And fair or not, when you are in that conversation for one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, it goes back to how many rings do you have. That's why we look at guys, like Joe Montana, guys like Tom Brady. Those are the guys that you look at as being some of the best quarterbacks of all time. John Elway with the Denver Broncos, and chasing that second ring would be gigantic for Peyton Manning. And I believe that is something that, as far as his legacy is concerned, I think his legacy is riding on that feud. If he can get a Super Bowl, a win before he retires, another one before he retires, I think that would be the icing on the cake for Manning. That would really change the conversation about Peyton Manning. Because right now the conversation is great quarterback, maybe best regular season quarterback ever, but just not a great playoff quarterback. And that's what his legacy is right now if he doesn't change it.
And my final question for you, James, is at the end of the day, where do you see this Broncos team ending the season, and do you think they have enough firepower to send Manning off in the sunset with another Super Bowl?
I think offensively, I think they do. I think this offensive line that they experimented with last season with some changes as they moved some guys around positionally, I think that was a failure. I think the offensive line is going to be better this year. We'll see how the draft goes. But they do have Demaryius Thomas back. He's a big-time playmaker. They have him. We saw what Sanders did last year for the Broncos as a wide receiver. He had an excellent season. And C.J. Anderson at running back really was a revelation for the Broncos. There's a lot of offensive talent on this team. And if Gary Kubiak and Peyton Manning can find a way to sort of meet in the middle on this new offense here, I think the Broncos could be very potent. Their defense is considered to be, by many analysts, and it could be, the best defense in that division. We'll see as the season progresses, and we're still in the offseason here, but this could be a very good Broncos team. I think the goal, though, is get to the playoffs, but the expectations have started to shift. I think after we saw the way the Broncos ended last season, that lost to the Colts the way that they lost, there's a lot of question marks about Peyton Manning. Does he have the talent around him to get to a Super Bowl and maybe even win it, as you say? I think he does. I think the Broncos do have that talent, but it's going to come down to what Peyton Manning does with that talent and how much he still has left in the tank. And to me, that's the million-dollar question. I guess we'll have to find out and see.
Well, James, thank you for your time this afternoon and for joining us on the Two Man Advantage podcast.
Thanks so much, Kevin. Appreciate you having me on, man.